Good morning, Zoe. How are
Good
you?
morning.
Welcome to the Data Strategy Show. Great
Thank
to have
you.
you on.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's wonderful. Um, we have tried to do this before a couple of times, haven't we?
We
And now
have.
we're here.
We have. We finally did it.
So, um, look, it's interesting for me because this whole series has really piqued my interest in a lot of different from a lot of different angles and people I've been speaking to, mainly around women in the workplace and women in data and women in tech, and that's why I've themed it in that sense. And really, what I want to do is to understand what your um, where you are. Obviously, we'll go into your background in a minute, but
Mhm.
where you are as a woman in data, a woman in tech, and your experiences through that and how they've evolved. And I get a lot of people saying to me, we still live in a very, specifically in the data area, very male-dominated still. You go
Absolutely.
to lots of conferences, and it's still all male panels and so on. And I think I'm learning. I'm kind of trying to understand what this is, where some people have said they don't feel like it's a big deal. Some
Hmm.
people have said, yeah, it still exists. So, I'm just trying to sort of get a real good insight into how people think. But anyway, for
Yeah,
the audience, and you've never been on before, so it'd be great to get a little bit of background about you and who you are.
absolutely. So I studied information technology at University of Hertfordshire. I graduated in 2013 and went to work for patent attorneys. So I was
Okay.
working in their records team, their back
Hmm.
end administration team, on their InproTech platform. So I was looking
Yeah.
after SSRS reporting, data platforms, that sort of stuff. I moved around a couple of times and ended up at Reward in 2016,
Hmm.
where I had the most amazing career growth ever. They gave me so much opportunity, which was absolutely brilliant. So I started there in 2016 as a database analyst. I was there
Right.
for nearly 9 years, and I left last month um, as head of data engineering. So
Okay.
the vast majority of my career has been spent at Reward. So it started off very much learning SQL, SSIS, SSRS reports. We started doing Tableau reporting, things like that.
Hmm.
I eventually took on more and more responsibility for the BI team, for the data operations team. And then, as I say, we evolved into this data engineering team, which became three separate Scrum teams focused on three
Hmm.
different pillars of the business, lots of conflicting priorities, lots of amazing cloud tech that we were working on, lots of really value driven projects. So it was really, really good. I had a lot of experience as a data leader, as a project
Hmm.
manager, as a product owner. I was kind of wearing lots and lots of different hats.
Right.
Um, Decided it was time for a bit of a change. And
Hmm.
as I say, I left last month and now I am at Serco,
Okay.
where I am head of data and insight for the UK and Europe growth team. So I'm really looking
Wow.
into the sales enablement. How can we win more bids? How can we win more
Hmm.
contracts? And most importantly, how are we using our data to do that? So there's a lot of data driven initiatives that I'm kicking off around, bid responses. How are we
Hmm.
using AI to determine how we can do better?
Hmm.
But it's really interesting for me because it's the team and the tech have a little bit to go in terms of hygiene factors. We're putting in an SDLC and things like that to make sure that we've got test environments and
Yeah.
that we're releasing to stakeholders in the right way. So it's really nice that I'm kind of ramping my way up slowly, getting kind of the ways of working sorted before we really dig into the main
Yeah.
tech value driven stuff. But it's really exciting. I'm very happy with my decision to move on. It was the right time for me, and I'm really looking forward to what's coming up. And the thing that interested me about this role, my background is very data driven, tech
Hmm.
heavy,
Hmm.
but this is also just as importantly about the insight and the analytics, which I'm really excited to get stuck into as well. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And it sounds like an exciting role because,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming with Circa, you'll be bidding into the central government and things like that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's Yeah, interesting. I used to do a similar role at Accenture.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So I did that for about 2 years,
Yeah.
working mainly for all of the UK government bidding that we did for Accenture. So
Yeah.
I had up that team and worked alongside all the sales people who were in that
Perfect.
process.
So I
So
can come
I
and
know.
pick your brains then.
Yeah, yeah. That would be fine. That would be
Yeah.
perfectly fine. So let's talk about your experiences.
Yes.
And look, as I said previously, this is very much a learning process for me, and I don't come at this with any kind of, it, sort of judgment or anything like that. And I'm very much a blank canvas in terms of,
Yeah.
I really want to understand where there is bias in the workplace, where there are challenges for women, and
Yeah.
what can be done about those things,
Hmm.
and how do we tackle it, and how do we get awareness. So I know there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And I guess it's, have you experienced it, and in what kind of guise have you experienced it before?
I I'm probably in the minority. I'm
Right,
not gonna lie.
right.
So outside of work, as a little bit of context, and I was listening to Catherine's episode, the episode one
Okay,
that
the
you did,
first one, yes.
and this really made me laugh because she said about, involving women in, business trips and days out and stuff like that, and going on a golf course. Is that
Yes,
very does that focus more on men than it does women? But I actually
yes.
play golf,
That's
so
right. Yes,
I've
yes, I remember you saying.
I actually laughed when she said that because she's 100% right. And there's a lot of stuff that I've been doing with my golf club and throughout the years, Essex County Golf, to try and get more women into golf, because it is typically that male dominated kind of sport.
Yes.
But it did make me laugh when she said that. So having grown up playing golf and
Yeah,
being around a lot of men
yeah.
outside of the workplace as well, I'm probably in the minority because I've grown up with that. It's just normal
Right.
to me.
Yes, yes.
So I personally haven't really struggled with it
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
of that kind of element, but I am very, very aware that there are people that have struggled. Um,
So that's interesting. Let's just kind of try and think about that, because
yeah,
playing golf, as you said, is a very male oriented
yeah,
game, and I completely understand that. What has been the difference for you in the way that you have but your way, has your behavior changed? Has something made you realize? What kind of insights did you get from that you might be able to sort of, allude to, and say, well, I've never had
yeah.
problems, but what were those things that made you feel, oh yeah, I know exactly how to respond to this, or work in this environment?
Yeah, I think it's just the company that you're in. So when I was younger, I spent a lot of time
Oh,
playing golf with my dad, with his friends, with his family. A few of them were very high up in some of the banks and things like that. So being exposed to how they thought about things, both in the business world and personal world, from such a young age, I think I just naturally gravitated to that sort of way of thinking. Um, but that's also not to say that that's all I thought about growing
mm-hmm,
up.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, it is a tricky one.
Yeah.
I mean, even women in golf, like some of those can be. I don't even really know what the word is. So okay, I'll give you an example. Right, so women biologically have different anatomy to men. They go
Sure.
through a certain period every
Yeah.
month that
Yep.
is unavoidable.
Yep.
Our team kit prior to me joining the golf club was white shorts, white
Yep.
bottoms, and I
Yep.
categorically said I'm not wearing white, categorically. And there are other ladies that have, bowel issues, and they potentially wouldn't want to wear white either. But no one really stood up and said, okay, we don't want to wear white.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, I'm going to wear black. You can all wear white, but I'm going to wear black. And now more and more of them are wearing black. It was just that they
Right.
felt uncomfortable to speak
Yeah,
up and say,
sure.
I don't want to wear white.
Yeah.
And that's for many reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
women
yeah, of course.
can be just as
Right.
not open and honest about things as they potentially should be. And it's really important that you have women speaking up, but also the men allies as well, which is why it's really good that you're doing this and trying to shine a light on it. And it's also to say that everyone is learning. You know, you said that you're just kind of digging into this and blank canvas and stuff, but everyone is learning. You know, gender is entirely different these days to when I first started in the workplace and first started playing golf. And, you know, there are trans men, trans women who will be experiencing the same sort of bias. And it's about including all of those people as well, because they will be experiencing different bias to what biological women will be experiencing too. So, yeah, I think for me, it's always been a case of, let's include everybody, let's make sure everybody's thought of, and trying to do that, talking in the way that I have heard men talk about these sort of things, and trying to get into their mindset to try and get the point of view across. But people have got to be loud enough and bold enough to speak up at the same time.
So it's interesting that you say loud and bold, because not everybody's loud and bold.
No, exactly.
So what would you then say to those women who may, or, you know, coming up right now, who aren't loud and bold and may sit back, you know, are introverted and sort of, you know, cannot get their voices heard? What would you say, which is a you know, something, because obviously I can see from you are loud and bold, but you know,
but I never used to be.
Right. Okay. So there you go. And therefore, what was the switch? Was it just your confidence, or was it some, you know, a specific thing that happened, or, you know, you just said, oh, screw it, I'm just gonna, you know, go out there and show everybody who I am?
Yeah. I think from a person, it was basically a personal confidence perspective. I think I started feeling like I did have something to say, I did have something worthwhile to say, and I saw the way other people were being treated and thought, no, I'm not going to put up with that. I'm going to speak for them because they don't feel they can speak for themselves. So I think that was kind of mostly it. I think for me, in terms of the workplace, it was like speaking courses and speaking with confidence. And, you know, TED Talks about the superhero pose and things like that, just to try and get you in that mindset.
You'll have to tell me about the superhero pose. You have to tell me about that, because I haven't seen that TED Talk.
It's on Grey's Anatomy as well. I love Grey's Anatomy. But basically, if you stand there like that for 5 minutes like a superhero, you will start to feel centered and calm, and therefore not scrambling minds, and you'll present yourself a bit clearer.
I didn't know that. That's so weird.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there's a superhero pose, because my wife, she really laughs when myself and my daughter stand, you know, just, you know, if we're standing somewhere or whatever, because we typically both put our hands on our
it's a power pose,
and she
you
always
naturally stand taller. Yeah.
And she says, what is it with you two? Is it just genes or something? And I said, well, it must be, because I don't know. And it's so funny that you're saying that. Okay, all right. Well, that's good.
Yeah, definitely look into it. But as I say, things like that, and, you know, courses on speaking with confidence and things like that, and then just putting yourself out there. You know, I only really started doing this sort of stuff and speaking out more at the beginning of this year. You know, I've been in the industry for sort of 13 years now, and it was only beginning of this year I felt, do you know what? I do actually know what I'm talking about. I can actually speak about this. So having that kind of mental switch as well, I think helped. But it's just getting yourself out there. Just try it. No one's going to know. No one's going to remember if you messed up. No one's going to know if you messed up.
Yeah.
You know,
I think there's something about the confidence angle, which seems to be coming up with everybody I speak to. And whether that's, you know, whether that's the you know, the confidence around your subject, or the confidence of just being yourself in public, or the confidence of walking into a room where there's a bunch of people. I think those are the kinds of things that lots of people have to deal with. I just don't think it's women per se. I think lots and lots of people have those same challenges. But there is one small nuance which keeps emerging, which is this thing about, and it's just not me saying it, it's literally every person who's been on the podcast so far has basically said that women really have to know 100% about everything before they commit to something. Whereas men probably are at 80% or even less. It's like, yeah, fine, let's talk about that. If I don't know everything, I'll kind of swat up on it and whatever. So where does that come from? What's that? Because I'm trying to work out this idea of why women have to be completely 150%, because my wife is the same. And we often talk about this, but I've never really understood why that sort of parameter is there.
I think women typically have a perception that people are going to laugh at them if they get something wrong or if they say something that's incorrect. So they feel like they have to be 100% prepared. I read an email 10 times before I send it, things like that. So I still do that. I have tendencies where I'm triple checking things all the time to make sure that I've got everything covered. I think it's this social perception that you have to have everything together all the time. And actually you don't have to have everything together all the time. And I applied for my job at Serco now, knowing that I didn't have as much analytics experience as they probably wanted, but I demonstrated what I did know and how that could bring benefit to the team and to the business, and explained, I'm a really keen learner. I love learning about things. I can research things, and it's about showing the willingness to do things, not just knowing everything off the top of your head. I have a memory like a sieve. I forget everything. I have to write everything down. If I had to try and remember everything 100% of the time, I wouldn't be able to get through life. So it's just this perception of trying to have everything together all the time, but you really don't need to. And if men can blag it, why can't women? It's if you can't do it now, you'll figure out how to do it later. And actually, that is a skill in itself, figuring out how to do something. And women are typically very good at that. They will typically find a way to do something if they don't know how to do it, or they'll know where to research or things like that. They will find a way around it.
And throughout your career, have you sought out the types of people that you want to sort of have in your circle of mentors or coaches, or and have they typically been women, or have they been a mixture of both sexes? What would you?
So throughout my mentors throughout the workplace have all been men. I've reported into men all the time, with the exception of one female leader, but she was operations driven rather than tech driven. But she was also brilliant and gave me some really good advice on just how to frame things to stakeholders and things like that, things that weren't specifically technological. Outside of work, my mentors have been female, because I wanted to get that. I wanted to get some female mentorship as well as male mentorship. But it's interesting because my female mentors have all been about how you present yourself, how you speak, how you manage yourself in front of people. Whereas the male mentors have all been about, this is how I would approach this technological problem, and less so about how to present yourself. So one is the emotional side. It's really interesting to get both sides to it.
So one is the heavy sort of technical component, and one is more of the emotional quotient side and presentation. And it's funny because I guess would you go and find those people from the external mentors? Are they in your network? Where did you find them? How did you go and meet them? Or were they family members? Where how did you sort them out?
Through mentoring schemes, actually.
Okay.
So up until sort of the beginning of this year, my network was substantial, but it wasn't huge. There wasn't anyone that kind of stood out to me as I think I could learn a lot from them. So it was all through these official mentoring schemes. So Catherine runs one with Carl Winterbottom, as she said on her first podcast, on your first podcast. I'm a mentor through She Does Data with Emma Crabtree at Mariah
Never
Talent.
heard of them. Yeah.
So there's all these different kinds of mentorship schemes out there, both men and women. And it's really important when you're applying for these schemes, whether it's to be a mentor or a mentee, that you clearly state what it is that you want and or what you can offer, so that they match you up with the right mentor that's going to help you.
Yeah.
If you really want that technical element, then make sure you say that. If you want the emotional element, make sure you say that, because then you will get the most out of the partnership with the mentor. I have a mentor at the moment through the Cognify scheme, actually.
Okay.
She's been brilliant. She's really helped me kind of get to grips with my new role and suggested things to do. I've explained to her what our tech stack is like and things like that. So she, on the opposite side, has actually been very helpful on the technical side, but it's also been about the emotional side as well. And actually with my mentees, because I'm a mentor as well, because people can benefit from both.
Sure.
With my mentee, I'm very conscious not to focus on one or the other unless they specifically ask me, because it is important to get that well-rounded experience from people.
Agreed.
And people do have all this experience that you can lean on, so why not use them?
Yeah, I agree. And I think maybe some of the schemes that you talked about, She Does Data and Cognify, I've never heard of them. So, I'm assuming that others may not. So it's if you're listening to this and you're thinking about, getting a mentor, well, try and reach out to these, particular groups.
There's loads out there.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, because I'm a mentor for the Kyle, and I do that as well, and my mentee is a woman, actually. So that's really interesting for me. So now, moving forward, then, in your career, what are the things that you're going to be doing then to help or usher in that sort of courage and being loud, or whatever we want to call it, to others who whether they're in your team, and what are the top 3 things that you would typically kind of do in order to make somebody feel this, and coach them or mentor them? But what would you do? What are your sort of knacks, of bringing people through into, whether it's a new leadership role or just making them feel confident? How do you sort of do that with people?
I never tell someone what to do. I get them to think about it and ask probing questions, because if you tell someone what to do, it's less likely to hit with them what kind of impact it's going to have. So coaching itself is a skill. Make sure you coach someone rather than tell them what to do. I did have a manager once on the technical side where I asked how to do something, and they would take the keyboard off of me and start typing and say, this is how you should do it. But I just wanted to know how to do it, and I could type it myself. But that was their style of teaching, and at the time I didn't feel like I could probably say much about it, but it did also help me as well, because it was quicker and we won deadlines and stuff like that. So I do understand why, but I would definitely say coach people rather than telling people what to do is the first thing. Encouraging the mentorship schemes, encouraging coaching and webinars, and there's all kinds of stuff out there. Content creation is a massive thing now that it wasn't when I first started in the industry. So get yourself involved in that. Listen to the podcast, watch the webinars. There's stuff on everything, and it doesn't have to necessarily be just about data or technology. As I say, it can be about speaking with confidence and tips and tricks to present things and things like that. So I would definitely say that as well. And the third thing I would really encourage people is, don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to say that you don't know. People will respect you a lot more if you put your hands up and say, do you know what, I don't know about this, but I'm going to go and figure it out. There's not that pressure to know everything, so don't feel like there is. And trying to get into that kind of mindset and coach that mindset is another thing that I try and do as well. But we all just need to bolster each other. Having allies is really important for all minority groups, and just bolster people up. We've got a WhatsApp group with female tech leaders, and we say, I've done this, do you think this is good? Yes, that's
Yep.
great, let's carry on with that. Or have you thought about this? And just bounce ideas off of people. Use your network, use your community. The people are there, they've got the experience, just use them.
Yeah. And where do you think that there are still challenges that exist? If you're looking at it from the external perspective, because I know you say you don't really have those challenges, and that's great. Where do you think they still exist in the workplace, and where do you see it sometimes, if there is a sort of, friction points?
Yeah, I think, getting more women onto, senior leadership positions, director positions, board positions, I aspire to do that at some point in the future. So, how do I get there? So kind of laying out that pathway for people is really important. I think was it 30%? I think I saw the other day of women are in leadership positions. So it is getting better, but it's still obviously not 50-50. And, we're talking about women that have gone through life experience and raising a family and things like that can bring some real value and experience to this sort of
absolutely.
stuff.
Absolutely.
I think just leading with like a people first approach as well. So I still see some, and this is women as well as men, I still see some leaders completely entirely focused on results. And I know that is a very, very big thing, and you obviously need to focus on results, but they are also people in your team. The cost of retention is much, much less than the cost of hiring, as we all know. So what are we doing to retain these people? What are we doing to retain women in the industry after they've gone off and had a family, or if they've gone off on long-term sick and come back, or caring for someone in their family, or whatever it is? Anyone in particular, what are we doing to get them back in the industry? And what are we doing to get the young girls coming through the education system into these STEM programs so that they're filling up when people start retiring? So I think there's a lot to be said about the education sector and, people coming back to work.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually, about the education system, because, a lot of certainly there's been a huge amount of emphasis on STEM. And actually, my daughter is, at their school, they call it STEAM, because they put an A in there for art. So that's really interesting, because, science, technology, engineering, and maths is fine. But actually, a lot of mathematicians or engineers are very musically inclined.
Yes.
So actually putting an arts-based function in there, or, is really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you still think that, I don't know what the percentage is actually of in STEM degrees and the like. I don't know whether there's less women in those pools, which might be quite an interesting quick question that I could ask to Copilot here, which would be interesting to know whether there is anything.
I don't know the figures on that, unfortunately. When I was at university, the percentage of females in the class was around 20%.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask it.
Let's do it. Live demo.
Yeah.
Put some hold music in the background.
It's always, when you go through the prompts and you think, oh gosh, have I done that right? So let's see what it says. Let's see what it says. It was a quick on the fly prompt. I'll move it over to my bigger screen. So it says overall representation is about 35% of students enrolled in STEM degrees in the UK and higher education are women.
That's good. That's getting better.
So they actually, and by subject area, this is so here we also that's really interesting. Physical sciences 39% female, mathematical sciences 37% female. Here's the interesting part: computer sciences only 19%. So Wow. So that actually
That's a
is,
big difference.
that's a massive difference. I didn't,
Big
and
difference.
engineering and technology also only 19% female.
Yeah.
And that's from something called stemwomen.com. So they've got
Wow.
women in STEM statistics.
That is
Wow.
really interesting.
Yeah, I didn't think it would have been that low for 19%.
Yeah, as I say, when I was at university, it was around 20%. I mean, our information technology and computer science courses were linked together because a lot of the
Right.
modules
Yeah.
overlapped.
Yeah.
Your degree title kind of came at the end from your dissertation and your final year
Right.
modules rather
Of
than your
course.
first or second year. So we overlapped a lot, and at that point it was only about 20%. So that's really
Okay.
interesting that it
So
hasn't changed.
yeah, it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if I cast my mind back to when I was in university, so I did a very similar degree, and I reckon there was only probably about, we're looking at about 10% female.
Wow.
So and that was back in, going to show my age now. That was back in 1992. So that's
I won't tell you what year I was born.
yeah, no, don't. When you said I came out of my, when you came, I got it, I came out of my degree 13 years ago. I was thinking, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's interesting because that means that there's still quite a big gender imbalance, really. Specifically in those computer, tech, and engineering fields.
Yeah.
Which I guess will reflect then in the industry.
It will. Yeah.
But I guess that I'm not too sure whether, where I've seen it, a lot of women who might be doing, mathematical degrees or physical sciences degrees or whatever, or, geography, history. I think a lot of those will typically end up in consulting. So you see quite a lot of, the workforce, which is, which has a higher representation, I think, of women in the workforce. So interesting. But yeah, that was on the fly. Sorry, you wanted to say something.
I was going to say, I think the other thing as well is the data industry has changed so much. I mean, never mind the fact that the tool landscape's changed, but the types of jobs you can do within data has completely changed. We're now looking more at data as a product. So
yes,
that can lend itself to more, I don't want to say female tendencies, but that kind of emotional.
Why is that? Why does it have more female tendencies?
I think because it's less technical, people think of this. I mean, you think of the stereotype of, people sitting there doing coding. You think of like the IT crowd or Big Bang Theory and things like that. And, I love those two shows and they're absolutely hilarious. But you can see why people would think that is a stereotype of people that work in technology.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if women or young girls don't want to get into that sort of field because of that kind of stereotype. But things like product, where you're designing how something's going to work, you're designing how a user is going to interact with something. It's less technical because you're not sitting there doing the coding, but it's still very much a tech-driven role.
But it's more about it's an empathy kind of
it is.
approach as well. And I would think from design factors, because I remember casting my mind back, doing things like human computer interaction, and just working with that sort of design factor of how you would design a way that I would integrate, or at least be able to work with. But interesting, because every that product, that data product role is fairly new.
It is.
And quite frankly, I don't know that many women in the data product role.
No.
So it's interesting that you say that now, because most of the people that instinctively I think about from a data product perspective are all men.
Yeah, but as I say, I think once it kind of becomes more embedded in the industry, I think we will hopefully start to see more of an influx of women in those sort of roles. I also do wonder if, looking at product as a function, if you get sort of, now that data products is becoming a big thing, if you've got people in generalized product, they see the value that data can bring, might want to come into the data product side and then actually think, I want to know a bit more about that. I'm going to do a couple of courses on SQL or Python, and that would get more women into it as well. It's all these different pathways and things that we can do, but it's about getting it out there in front of people so that they know that these things are available to them.
And I think that's important because, you know, if I look at my own career and I say I've never had a kind of linear career, it's been all over the place. Purely, mainly, some of it was luck, you know, and it was just something that fell in my lap. Others was I actually went to, you know, I sought it out because there was knowledge that I didn't have, and I wanted to acquire, and I could only do that in a specific industry.
That's the same as me, though.
You
know, I grew a lot at Reward because of the nature of the business and the changes that happened in the business, and how, you know, the taking on the responsibility for the BI team was kind of thrust upon me. I didn't go seeking it out, but it gave me an opportunity to grow. And then we started evolving into this more of a data engineering space, and I'm like, okay, I know SQL, I know how to create stored procedures, I know how to create a report, but we're in the world of cloud now. How do I guide my team on things like that? So I had to go out and start learning about AWS and, you know, spinning up environments and proper CI/CD and things like that. So, you know, even people in those senior positions still have things to learn, still feel like they're a fraud sometimes. And, you know, it's take the opportunities when they're given to you, you know, and just throw yourself into it and don't be afraid to fail.
That's a wonderful message to end on.
Ah, perfect.
That's been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, insights, and just, you know, the passion that you bring to what you do, which is wonderful to see. And I hope, you know, people listening to this particular episode will get such rich content from you.
I hope so.
So yeah, fantastic.
If I can help one person from this, I'll feel like I've done good. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure.